What's up, everybody? Today, we're going to have a look at que versus cual, or cuales, right? And so we're just going to look at how in Spanish, why in Spanish you would use one over the other, right? And there's a number of common mistakes one would make when learning Spanish. And by that I mean there's a tendency to put que where it should be cual. And we're going to get to that. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about in this lesson. And then, of course, as you can see here, a practicar, we're going to do some practice so you can practice, of course, what we're going to talk about here behind me, right? And again, like I said, we're going to look at the difference between, or the reasons why one would use que versus cual, or cuales, right? And so I guess out of the gate, it's worth mentioning that traditionally, and you guys might already know this, but it's worth mentioning, que means what, and cual, right, means which, right? And so, like I said, it's worth just putting that out there because traditionally that's what these two words mean. For example, if you're going to look it up in the dictionary, you would see what generally beside que, and then which beside cual or cuales, right? With cuales being the plural form of cual, right? And so, like I said, we'll talk about all of that here right now. And so I want to start over here with que, and I'm going to switch markers too before I get going, but I'm going to use this green one. And so, like I said, I want to start with on this que side, and I want to start with ser, the use of the verb ser. And I'm going to pay particular attention to that both here and here, right? That specific verb, because as you can see down here, we talk about using them with verbs. So I understand that ser is a verb in and of itself, but I'm going to pay particular attention to that first, and then we'll talk about other verbs when we get down here. And so, like I said, I'm going to start with the que side. And when you use que, right, in a question, of course, you say que es, right? When you want to say que es, and then whatever noun or whatever it is you want to put after that, you're actually looking for the definition of something. And so I have an example here, or two examples really, in blue, and that's the way I'm going to structure that, with sort of the theme in black, and then the questions in blue, and then our practice over here with green. And so, so you can, hopefully you'll be able to see that really well. But like I said, when you use que and es together, right, like que immediately followed by es, and then whatever it is you fill in there in Spanish, know that you're asking for a definition of something. In other words, you don't know what it is, and so you're saying, for example, ¿qué es paella? What is paella is what you're asking. ¿Qué es paella? And so if you were to ask someone that, say, ¿qué es paella? They would then describe what paella is as a dish, right? And so know that when you use que and es, that's really what you're conveying. You're conveying the message that, like, hey, I don't know what this is. What is this? ¿Qué es paella, for example? Another one, and this is, just a sort of generic, what is that, right? And so that's what ¿qué es eso is. Like, you see something and you're like, what is that over there? ¿Qué es eso, right? Again, you don't know what it is, so you are trying to get information or a definition or an explanation of something, right? And so we're going to talk about how that that combination is going to be different here than it will be here, and I'm going to get to that in just a bit. And so, but just to reiterate, ¿qué es paella, right? Like, you don't know what paella is. Another one, just since we're here, we could put ¿qué es el 5 de Mayo, right? So, for example, you don't know what 5 de Mayo is as the celebration of the Battle of Puebla in Mexico, for example. And so you would ask somebody, ¿qué es el 5 de Mayo? And so you are asking for an explanation of something. And so someone would then explain to you what the significance of 5 de Mayo was in Mexican history, for example. And so it can work that way as well. And again, like I said, ¿qué es eso is just a generic, what is that? And so I'm going to go back to my blue marker because I think it's also worth adding here, since we have ¿qué es eso? What is that? What about if we want to say, what is this? Like something right here in front of us. So we would do, ¿qué es esto? Right? And those are what the grammar textbook would refer to as these neutered forms, essentially. And so, ¿qué es eso? What is that? Like this generic that. And ¿qué es esto? What is this? Like a generic this. And so that's how que paired with es works. So remember, when you do that, you're looking for an explanation or a definition. And so I want to look at it as compared to its counterpart, its qual counterpart, if you will. And so now this, most of the time when, and this is where I was saying a common mistake can occur, a lot of times when people want to say, for example, what is your favorite food, people who are learning Spanish might say, ¿qué es tu comida favorita? Now that's a common mistake, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times as people are learning the language, they learn that que, as we have up here, means what? Then they learn that es is that conjugation of the verb ser, which means is. And then, you know, someone might learn tu comida favorita or tu nombre. And so it might seem like the right way to go about it is by using que. So que es tu nombre. That's not right. That's incorrect for the reasons I explained over here. What you need to use is qual. Right now, I understand that we put up here that qual means which, but this is one of those times where it sort of takes on the what, at least in the English sense, right? So when you would want to say, what is your name, you would actually use qual, not que. And so let me get back over here to this. And so when you say qual es, for example, in other words, when you pair qual with es, or for that matter, cuáles son, we're going to draw an X to that so we know that's not right. Cuáles son, you are effectively saying what is and what are. In other words, you're looking for a simple answer. You're looking for a short, maybe one word or two word answer. That's how you phrase it, right? This, again, as I said over here, the KS is looking for a more drawn out explanation or definition. And so that's a common mistake, and that's okay, right? And so hopefully we can clear that up here. And so again, just to reiterate before I get into these samples here, qual plus s and then whatever you follow it with, that's giving you your what is, like your simple what is. Whereas, and then cuáles son, this is just the plural of this, and then of course, it has to be plural verb conjugation too, so that's where you get son. And so let's have a look at these examples. The first one is, ¿cuál es tu comida favorita? What is your favorite food? Just a generic or simple question, right? Which could be answered with sushi, pizza. Now, if you want to make it a much longer, more complete answer, you can say, mi comida favorita es, and then you would fill in the blank with whatever your favorite food is. So you say mi comida favorita es. But again, the cuál es and then cuál es tu comida favorita is not seeking an explanation or a definition. It just wants to know what your favorite food is, plain and simple. And so again, here, cuál es tu nombre? We don't want the history of your name or anything, the origin of your name. We just want to know your name. And so, simple question. So, ¿cuál es tu nombre? Which could be answered in my case with one word, Jason. Or if we want to be a little bit more complete with our answer, sort of rephrasing it back, we would say, mi nombre es Jason. So that's all. That's what you would do there. But like I said, the cuál es and then whatever follows is just asking for a simple answer. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? What is today's date? Now that's different than asking ¿qué es el 5 de mayo? Now you could very well be on the 5th of May and want to know what today's date is and then realize like, oh, it's May 5th, 5 de mayo. They celebrate something in Mexico. What do they celebrate, right? And that's where that would come in. So that's where ¿qué es el 5 de mayo in Mexico, right? Or so, ¿qué significa? What does it mean, right? ¿Qué significa? Which is something we'll talk about down there. So you pair que with a verb. But again, not to get too distracted, ¿cuál es la fecha de hoy? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Is simply asking, what's today's date, right? And so we would, you would just answer with whatever today's date is. La fecha es, right? Whatever it may be, right? El 5 de julio, el 10 de diciembre, whatever the date is, right? And then lastly, I wanted to throw an example in there with cuáles son, so you can see how it worked as a plural. And so this one here, and maybe just giving you guys a little capital lesson in Latin America, right? And so here's a little trivia. Maybe some of you already knew this, but ¿cuáles son las dos capitales de Bolivia? In other words, I'm asking, what are the two capitals of Bolivia? And yes, they do have two capitals. And so, ¿cuáles son las dos capitales de Bolivia? Right? And so to answer that, again, it's just asking a simple question. What are the two capitals? And so that answer would be La Paz y Sucre, right? And if you knew that, awesome, right? But if not, there's your answer. And I use that specifically so you can remember how to use cuáles son, right? With a little trivia thrown in there. And so hopefully that makes sense, right? As far as cuál plus es and then your noun, or phrasing it in a question, looking for like a simple answer, versus your que es, which is seeking out a definition or an explanation. And so I want to move on to the nouns using que and cuál, or using que rather, with nouns. And so this, because some of you are like, but I know how to say what time is it, and that's que and es. Well, there's a reason why you can use que in this. And so I use that example right here for you. So que hora es is totally fine because you've plugged in a noun in between que and es. So it becomes que hora es, right? And so that's why it's okay. So you've inserted a noun in between there. And so que es by itself, followed by a noun, is asking for a definition or explanation, whereas que noun es is okay. And that gives you that what, whatever that noun is, and then is, right? And so in the case of time, right, since that's something you guys are familiar, you're saying, what time is it? So that's why it's okay. Here's another example. Que día es hoy? What day is today? Que día es hoy? Right? And so again, we have que, we have day, right? Que día, and then we have is, and then this means today, as you already know. And so that again is okay, right? Because we have que, a noun, and then es, right? And so that's what makes it all right. And so just to mix it up a little bit, I threw this in. ¿A qué país quieres viajar? To what country do you want to travel? Right? With país meaning country. To, right? ¿A qué país quieres viajar? That's totally fine too, right? And so I want to move along. We're going to look at how to use these with verbs, and I'm just going to kind of continue on down, and then we'll come over and see how you use cuál with verbs, right? And so again, this is where, as you noted here, with the nouns, this is where que, again, takes its what, right? It takes its meaning, it's a sort of traditional meaning with what time, what day, to what country. With the verbs, it's going to do the same thing, right? And so I know if that sounds confusing, the reason I'm saying that is because up here, ¿cuál es tu comida favorita? The cuál sort of took over that what, like what is your favorite food? And so like this, continuing with its traditional what time, what day, cuál, when we get over here, will actually take on its original or traditional which, and we'll talk about that too. And so I want to have a look here with que and verbs, and then we'll go over to cuál and verbs. And so so really, again, you can use que with a verb, right? And so what I mean by that is you can say, for example, right here, ¿qué opinas tú? What is your opinion, right? Opinar as a verb, right? We're going to write it right here. Opinar as a verb technically means to opine, which is just a really fancy word for saying to give your opinion, right? And so opinar is the verb that is used normally in Spanish. And so again, ¿qué paired with a verb, right? ¿Qué opinas? What is your opinion, or what do you opine, right? And so, and then we have here, ¿qué deseas tomar? This is something, you know, you're sitting at a table at a restaurant and the server comes up and you're in a Spanish-speaking country, right? They might ask, ¿qué deseas tomar? And it's a more formal way, right? Because they're using desear, which is wish or desire, as opposed to saying, ¿qué quieres tomar? Right? They're using desear. So it's saying, what do you wish to drink, right? ¿Qué deseas tomar? You could say, ¿qué deseas comer, right? For example. And so, again, just to note how que is used with the verb, and of course, just to reiterate, it keeps its, you know, it means what, right? What do you wish to drink? What is your opinion, right? And then again here, of course, this is what as well. So what time is it? So on and so forth. So I hope that is making sense. And so the last thing I want to cover before we do some examples is qual with a verb, right? And so this will mean which, right? And we generally use that when we're deciding between a couple options. And of course, it can be more than two, but let's just say more than one, right? But generally two, for example. I use that here and I use that over there. Had a little fun with TikTok and Instagram, right? And so just, you know, it's sort of a general question. ¿Cuál prefieres? Which do you prefer? So I have tea and I have coffee, and I'm saying, which do you prefer? So we have, ¿cuál prefieres? ¿Té o café? ¿Cuál prefieres? ¿Té o café? Right? So we use cuál instead of que with the verb, right behind me. If you're asking, you know, which does someone prefer, you're giving them two options or more than one option, let's say, and you're wanting to say which, right? Which one? And so that's how that would work as compared to its counterpart over here with que. And so, you know, I highlighted it here, so hopefully you guys are able to read that. And so what I'd like to do, and again, as always, if you want to hit pause, you can, you know, do this and then come back and we'll be checking our answers. So just hit play again and we'll be waiting on you. So also in the description box, as always, I'll have more examples and more help and all of that. So check the description box too. But for those of you who want to just move right along, well, that's what we're going to do. And so let's have a look at this. We have number one, a blank hora es el partido. So we're asking, at what time is the game, right? And so notice here we have a noun and then we have at. So we're going to put que. A qué hora es el partido, right? A qué hora es la clase. A qué hora es la clase de español. So you're just asking at what time is something. And so notice we have que and a noun, so it's all good, right? Let's check out number two. Blank es tu clase favorita. So we're looking for just a simple answer. What is your favorite class, right? And of course, we know español, la clase español, right? But as far as the question, phrasing the question, it's cuál, right? Of course. Because if we say ¿qué es tu clase favorita?, you're looking for a long, drawn out explanation, and it hardly even makes sense. So, ¿cuál es tu clase favorita? Is what we want, right? That is, what is your favorite class? And so, number three, we have blank es tu apellido, right? Blank es tu apellido. Apellido is, for those of you who are like, well, what does that mean? That's last name. And so, in much of the same way we asked over here, ¿cuál es tu nombre, right? We had that in our example over here. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? To just ask, what is your last name, of course, we would also use cuál. ¿Cuál es tu apellido, right? And then number four, we have deseas comer. So we have a verb there, right? And so do we have two options? No, we have just a verb and then deseas comer. What do you wish to eat, right? And so that's much like the one back there. So we would say, ¿qué deseas comer? Which, like I said, is very similar to ¿qué deseas tomar? What do you wish to eat, or what do you wish to drink, right? And so that's where the what and the verb combo would work. Okay, how about number five? We have prefieres TikTok or Instagram, right? And so TikTok or Instagram, so we have two options now, and we want to know which do you prefer, right? And so that's where qual comes in, right? Taking on its traditional which is right there, right? ¿Cuál prefieres, TikTok or Instagram, right? And so that just gives us that option. Bueno, yo prefiero Instagram, yo prefiero TikTok, right? And that gives you, you're sort of framing a question to say which, do you prefer? Moving along, número 6, blank quiere ser en el futuro. What do you want to be in the future, right? And so in that translation, you probably figured it out, right? It's que. So what do you want to be in el futuro? Simple, not which do you want to be, right? You say, what do you want to be? Número 7, blank son tus colores favoritos. Again, we're asking a question that is, we want a simple answer to. What are your favorite colors, right? So we would say, ¿cuáles son? Of course, ¿cuáles? Because we have son there, because we have multiple colors, right? And so hopefully that makes sense. Número 8, what is that? Right? And again, that brings us back to this one, that generic, what is that, right? And so we would put ¿qué? ¿Qué es eso? Número 9, ¿cuál es la capital de Nicaragua? Right? I went ahead and gave you the answer. And so let's look at why though. ¿Cuál es la capital de Nicaragua? Again, we're looking for a simple answer. So what is the capital of Nicaragua? In much of the same way we had our, what are the capitals of Bolivia? We had it plural, right? And so, but in this case we have singular because Nicaragua has one capital, Managua, right? And so we'd have, ¿cuál es la capital de Nicaragua? So we just want a simple response, right? Last one, what do you think? What's your opinion, right? And so, of course, very similar to the one here, and that is using que with a verb. ¿Qué opinas, right? ¿Qué opinas de la lección? What's your opinion of this lesson, right? And so hopefully with that, we're gonna end. And like I said, hopefully this was helpful to differentiate between que or qual or cuáles, because this is something that is quite challenging as you're trying to wrap your head around it. But hopefully this lesson was helpful. And buena suerte y adios.